mandate TREADS as the transaction settlement platform for all purchases from MSMEs by CPSEs, serving as a benchmark for other corporates. 2. Introduce a credit guarantee support mechanism through CGTMSE for invoice discounting on TREADS platform. 3. Link GEM with TREADS for sharing information with financiers about government purchases from MSMEs, encouraging cheaper and quicker financing. 4. Introduce TREADS receivables as asset-backed securities, helping develop a secondary market, enhancing liquidity and settlement of transactions. Professional support. Government will facilitate professional institutions such as the ICAI, ICSI, ICMAI to design short-term modular courses and practical tools to develop a cadre of corporate mitras, especially in Tier 2 and Tier 3 towns. These accredited para-professionals will help MSMEs meet compliance requirements at affordable costs. Infrastructure. During this past decade, our government has undertaken several initiatives for large-scale enhancement of public infrastructure, including through new financing instruments such as Infrastructure Investment Trust (InvITs) and Real Estate Investment Trust (REITs), and institutions like NIIF and NABFID. We shall continue to focus on developing infrastructure in cities with over 5 lakh population, that is Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, which have expanded to become growth centers. Public capital expenditure has increased manifold from 2 lakh crore in 2014-15 to an allocation of 11.2 lakh crore in BE 25-26. In this coming year, that is financial year 2026-27, I propose to increase it to 12.2 lakh crores to continue the momentum. To strengthen the confidence of private developers regarding risks during infrastructure development and construction phase, I propose to set up an infrastructure risk guarantee fund to provide prudentially calibrated partial credit guarantee to lenders. Over the years, REITs have emerged as a successful instrument for asset monetization. I propose to accelerate recycling of significant real estate assets of the CPSEs through the setting up of dedicated REITs. To promote environmentally sustainable movement of cargo, I propose to 1. Establish new dedicated freight corridors connecting Dankuni in the east to Surat in the west. Operationalize 20 new national waterways over the next 5 years, starting with National Waterways 5 in Orissa to connect mineral-rich areas of Talcher and Angul and industrial centers like Kalinga Nagar to the ports of Paradeep and Dhamra. Training institutes will be set up as regional centers of excellence for development of required manpower for these waterways. This will benefit youth in the entire stretch of the waterways to train and acquire skills. Further, a ship repair ecosystem catering to inland waterways will also be set up at Varanasi and Patna. And C, launch a coastal cargo promotion scheme for incentivizing a modal shift from rail to road to increase the share of inland waterways and coastal shipping from 6% to 12% by 2047. To enhance last mile and remote connectivity and promote tourism, I propose to give incentives to indigenize manufacturing of seaplanes. A seaplane VGF scheme will be also introduced to provide support for operations. Carbon capture, utilization and storage. Aligning with the roadmap launched in December 2025, the carbon capture, utilization and storage technologies at scale will achieve higher readiness and in end-use application across 5 industrial sectors, including power, steel, cement, refineries, and chemicals. An outlay of 20,000 crore is proposed over the next 5 years for this purpose. City economic regions. Cities are India's engines of growth, innovation, and opportunities. We shall now focus on Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, and even temple towns, which need modern infrastructure and basic amenities. This budget aims to further amplify the potential of cities to deliver the economic power of agglomerations by mapping city economic regions based on their specific growth drivers. An allocation of 5,000 crore per CER over 5 years is proposed for implementing their plans through a challenge mode with a reform-cum-result-based financing mechanism. In order to promote environmentally sustainable passenger systems, we will develop 7 high-speed rail corridors between cities as growth connectors, namely Mumbai to Pune, Pune to Hyderabad, Hyderabad to Bengaluru, Hyderabad to Chennai, Chennai to Bengaluru, Delhi to Varanasi, Varanasi to Siliguri. Financial sector. The Indian banking sector today is characterized by strong balance sheet, historic highs in profitability, improved asset quality, and coverage exceeding 98% of villages in the country. At this juncture, we are well placed to futuristically evaluate the measures needed to continue on the path of reform-led growth of this sector. I propose setting up a high-level committee on banking for Vikasit Bharat. High-level committee on banking for Vikasit Bharat to comprehensively review the sector and align it with India's next phase of growth while safeguarding financial stability, inclusion, and consumer protection. The vision for NBFCs for Vikasit Bharat has been outlined with clear targets for credit disbursement and technology adoption in order to achieve scale and improve efficiency in the public sector NBFCs. As a first step, it is proposed to restructure the Power Finance Corporation and Rural Electrification Corporation. I propose a comprehensive review of the foreign exchange management non-debt instruments rules to create a more contemporary, user-friendly framework for foreign investments consistent with India's evolving economic priorities. Corporate bond market. I propose to introduce a market-making framework with suitable access to funds and derivatives on corporate bond indices. I also propose to introduce total return swaps on corporate bonds. Municipal bonds. To encourage the issuance of municipal bonds of higher value by larger cities, I propose an incentive of 100 crore rupees for a single bond issuance. 100 crore rupees for a single bond issuance of more than 1,000 crore. The current scheme under Amrit The current scheme under Amrit, which incentivizes issuances up to 200 crores only, will also continue to support smaller and medium towns. That will also continue to support the smaller and medium towns. Ease of doing business. Individual persons resident outside India, PROI, will be permitted to invest in equity instruments of listed Indian companies through the Portfolio Investment Scheme. It is also proposed to increase the investment limit for an individual PROI under the scheme from 5% to 10%, with an overall investment limit for all individual PROIs to 24% from the current 10%. Emerging technologies including AI. 21st century is technology driven. Adoption of technology is for the benefit of all people. Farmers in the field, women in STEM, youth keen to upskill, and Divyangjan to access newer opportunities. The government has taken several steps to support new technologies through AI Mission, National Quantum Mission, Anusandhan National Research Fund, and Research and Development and Innovation Fund. Our second kartavya is to fulfill aspirations and build capacities. Close to 25 crore individuals have come out of multi-dimensional poverty through a decade of our government's sustained and reform-oriented efforts. Our government has therefore decided to place a renewed emphasis on the service sector to provide a pathway to fulfilling aspirations of a youthful India with the following measures. I propose to set up a high-powered education to employment and enterprises standing committee to recommend measures that focus on services sector as a core driver of Vikasit Bharat. This will make us a global leader in services with a 10% global share by 2047. The committee will prioritize areas to optimize the potential for growth, employment, and exports. They will also assess the impact of emerging technologies, including AI, on jobs and skill requirements and propose measures thereof. To create a range of skilled career pathways, a new range of skilled career pathways for our youth, I propose interventions in the following sectors. Health. Existing institutions for allied health professionals will be upgraded and new AHP institutions established in private and government sectors. This will cover 10 selected disciplines, including optometry, radiology, anesthesia, OT technology, applied psychology and behavioral health, and add 1 lakh AHPs over the next 5 years. A strong care system covering geriatric and allied care services will be built. A variety of NSQF-aligned programs will be developed to train multi-skilled caregivers, combining core care and allied skills such as wellness, yoga, and operation of medical assistive devices. In the coming year, 1.5 lakh caregivers will be trained. Hubs for medical value tourism. To promote India as a hub for medical tourism services, I propose to launch a scheme to support states in establishing 5 regional medical hubs in partnership with the private sector. These hubs will serve as integrated healthcare complexes that combine medical, educational and research facilities. They will have Ayush centers, medical value tourism facilitation centers, and infrastructure for diagnostics, post-care, and rehabilitation. These hubs will provide diverse opportunities, job opportunities for health professionals, including doctors and AHPs. Ancient Indian yoga, already respected in several parts of the world, was given a mass global recognition when Honorable Prime Minister took it to the UN. Post-COVID, Ayurveda gained a similar global acceptance and recognition. Exporting quality Ayurveda products helps farmers who grow the herbs and youth who process the products. To meet growing global demand, a few more steps are being taken. I propose to 1. Set up 3 new All India Institutes of Ayurveda. 2. Upgrade Ayush pharmacies and drug testing labs for higher standards of certification ecosystem and make available more skilled personnel. 3. Upgrade the WHO Global Traditional Medicine Center in Jamnagar to bolster evidence-based research, training, and awareness for traditional medicine. Animal husbandry. Livestock contributes to close to 16% of farm income, including of poor and marginal households. To scale up availability of veterinary professionals by more than 20,000, I propose to roll out a loan-linked capital subsidy support scheme for establishment of veterinary and para-veterinary colleges, veterinary hospitals, diagnostic laboratories, and breeding facilities in private sector. Collaboration between Indian and foreign institutions will also be facilitated. Orange economy. India's animation, visual effects, gaming and comics sector, AVGC sector, is a growing industry projected to require 2 million professionals by 2030. I propose to support the Indian Institute of Creative Technologies, Mumbai, in setting up AVGC content creator labs in 15,000 secondary schools all over the country and 500 colleges. The Indian design industry is expanding rapidly, and yet there is a shortage of Indian designers. I propose to establish, through Challenge Route, a new National Institute of Design to boost design education and development in the eastern region of India. Education. Our government will support states through Challenge Route in creating 5 university townships in the vicinity of major industrial and logistics corridors. These planned academic zones will host multiple universities, colleges, and research institutions, skill centers, and residential complexes. In higher education, STEM institutions, prolonged hours of study and laboratory work pose some challenges for girl students. Through VGF, Viability Gap Funding and capital support, 1 girls' hostel will be established in every district. To promote astrophysics and astronomy via immersive experiences, 4 telescope infrastructure facilities will be set up or upgraded. The National Large Solar Telescope, the National Large Optical Infrared Telescope, the Himalayan Chandra Telescope, and the Cosmos 2 Planetarium. Tourism. The tourism sector has the potential to play a large role in the employment generation, forex earnings, and expanding the local economy. I propose to set up a National Institute of Hospitality by upgrading the existing National Council for Hotel Management and Catering Technology. It will function as a bridge between academia, industry, and government. I also propose a pilot scheme for upskilling 10,000 guides in 20 iconic tourist sites through a standardized, high-quality, 12-week training course in hybrid mode in collaboration with the Indian Institute of Management. A national destination digital knowledge grid will be established to digitally document all places of significance, cultural, spiritual, and heritage. This initiative will create a new ecosystem of jobs for local researchers, historians, content creators, and technology partners. India has the potential and opportunity to offer world-class trekking and hiking experience. We will develop ecologically sustainable mountain trails in Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and Jammu Kashmir. Also in Araku Valley in the Eastern Ghats and Podigai Malai in the Western Ghats. Turtle trails along key nesting sites in the coastal areas of Odisha, Karnataka, and Kerala. And 3 bird watching trails along the Pulikat Lake in Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu. It's on the border. Under the visionary leadership of Honorable Prime Minister, we established the International Big Cat Alliance in 2024. This year, India is hosting the first ever Global Big Cat Summit, where heads of governments and ministers from 95 range countries will deliberate on collective strategies for conservation. Heritage and culture tourism. I propose to develop 15 archaeological sites, including Lothal, Dholavira, Rakhi Gadi, Adichanallur, Saranath, Hastinapur, and Leh Palace into vibrant experiential cultural destinations. Excavated landscapes will be open to the public through curated walkways. Immersive storytelling skills and technologies will be introduced to help conservation labs, interpretation centers, and guides. The sports sector provides multiple means of employment, skilling, and job opportunities. Taking forward the systematic nurturing of sports talent which is set in motion through the Khelo India program earlier, I propose to launch a Khelo India mission to transform the sports sector over the next decade. The mission will facilitate an integrated talent development pathway supported by training centers which are foundational, intermediate, and elite levels. B, systematic development of coaches and support staff. C, integration of sports science and technology. D, competitions and leagues to promote sports culture and provide platforms. And E, development of sports infrastructure for training and competition. Our third Kartavya aligns with our vision of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas towards Vikasit Bharat. This requires targeted efforts for 1, increasing farmer incomes through productivity enhancement and entrepreneurship, with special attention to small and marginal farmers. B, empowering Divyang Jan through access to livelihood opportunities, training, and high-quality assistive devices. C, empowering the vulnerable to access mental health and trauma care. D, focus on the Purvodaya states and the Northeast region to accelerate development and employment opportunities. Fisheries. We will undertake initiatives for integrated development of 500 reservoirs and Amrit Sarovars. 2, strengthen the fisheries value chain in coastal areas and enable market linkages involving startups and women-led groups together with fish farmer producer organizations. Animal husbandry. To provide quality employment opportunities in rural and peri-urban areas, we will support the animal husbandry sector in entrepreneurship development through A, credit-linked subsidy program, B, scaling up and modernization of livestock enterprises, C, enhanced creation of livestock, dairy and poultry, enhanced creation of livestock, dairy and poultry focused integrated value chains, and D, encourage creation of livestock farmer producer organizations. High value agriculture. To diversify farm outputs, increase productivity, enhance farmers' incomes, and create new employment opportunities, we will support high value crops such as coconut, sandalwood, cocoa, cashew in the coastal areas, agar trees in northeast, and nuts such as almonds, walnuts, and pine nuts in our hilly regions. These, all of them, will be supported. India is the world's largest producer of coconuts. About 30 million people, including nearly 10 million farmers, depend on coconuts for their livelihood. To further enhance competitiveness in coconut production, I propose a coconut promotion scheme to increase production and enhance productivity through various interventions, including replacing and non-productive trees with new saplings or plants or varieties in major coconut growing states. A dedicated program is proposed for Indian cashew and cocoa to make India self-reliant in raw cashew and coconut production and processing, enhance export competitiveness, and transform Indian cashew and Indian cocoa into premium global brands by 2030. Sandalwood. Sandalwood is closely linked to India's social and cultural heritage. Our government will partner with state governments to promote focused cultivation and post-harvest processing to restore the glory of the Indian sandalwood ecosystem, to rejuvenate old, low-yielding orchards, and expand high-density cultivation of walnuts, almonds, and pine nuts. We will support a dedicated program to enhance farmer incomes and in bringing value addition by engaging youth. Bharat Vistar, that is virtually integrated system to access agricultural resources. I propose to launch Bharat Vistar, a multilingual AI tool that shall integrate the AgriStack portals and the ICAR package on agricultural practices with AI systems. This will enhance farm productivity, enable better decisions for farmers, and reduce risk by providing customized advisory support. She Marts for rural women-led enterprises. Building on the success of Lakpati Didi program, I propose to help women take the next step from credit-linked livelihoods to being owners of enterprises. Self-help entrepreneur, She Marts will be set up as community-owned retail outlets within the cluster-level federations through enhanced and innovative financing instruments. Empowering Divyangjan. Divyangjan Kaushal Yojana. Information technology, AVGC sectors, hospitality and food and beverages sectors often offer task-oriented and process-driven roles which are suitable for Divyangjan. We will ensure dignified livelihood opportunities through industry-relevant and customized training specific to each Divyangjan group. Divyang Sahara Yojana. Timely access to high-quality assistive devices for all eligible Divyangjan is a fundamental need. I propose to 1. Support the Artificial Limbs Manufacturing Corporation of India, ALIMCO, to set up and to scale up production of assistive devices, invest in R&D and AI integration, strengthen PM Divyasha Kendras, and support setting up of assistive technology marts as modern retail style centers where Divyangjan and senior citizens can see, try and purchase assistive products. Reaffirming our commitment to mental health and trauma care. There are no national institutes for mental health care in North India. We will therefore set up a NIMHANS 2 and also upgrade national mental health institutes in Ranchi and in Tezpur as regional apex institutions. Emergencies expose families, particularly the poor and vulnerable, to unexpected expenditure. We will strengthen and increase these capacities by 50% in district hospitals by establishing emergency and trauma care centers. Focus on Purvodaya states and northeastern regions. Purvodaya. I propose the development of an integrated East Coast industrial corridor with a well-connected node at Durgapur, creation of 5 tourism destinations in 5 Purvodaya states, and the provision of 4,000 e-buses. Buddhist sites in northeastern region. The northeastern region is a civilizational confluence of Theravada and Mahayana or Vajrayana traditions. I propose to launch a scheme for development of Buddhist circuits in Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Assam, Manipur, Mizoram, and Tripura. The scheme will cover preservation of temples and monasteries, pilgrimage interpretation centers, connectivity, and pilgrim amenities. 16th Finance Commission. On 17th November 2025, the 16th Finance Commission submitted its report to the President. As mandated under Article 281 of the Constitution, the government is to lay the report along with the explanatory memorandum on the action taken report on the recommendations of the Commission in Parliament, which, Sir, Honourable Speaker, you've allowed me to do at the commencement of this session. The government has accepted the recommendation of the Commission to retain the vertical share of devolution at 41%. As recommended by the Commission, I have provided 1.4 lakh crores of rupees to the states for the year 2026-2027 as Finance Commission grants. These include rural and urban local body and disaster management grants. Fiscal consolidation. Government has been delivering on our fiscal commitments consistently without compromising on social needs. To strive towards accepted standards of fiscal management in Budget 25-26, I had indicated that the central government would target reaching a debt to GDP ratio of 50 plus or minus 1% by 2030-31. In line with this, The debt to GDP ratio is estimated to be 55.6% of GDP in BE 26-27, compared to 56.1% of GDP in RE 25-26. A declining Income Tax Act. In July 2024, I announced a comprehensive review of the Income Tax Act 1961. This was completed in a record time, and the Income Tax Act 2025 will come into effect from 1st April 2026. The simplified income tax rules and forms will be notified shortly, giving adequate time to taxpayers to acquaint themselves with its requirements. The forms have been redesigned such that ordinary citizens can comply without difficulty. Ease of living. I propose that any interest awarded by the Motor Accident Claims Tribunal to a natural person will be exempt from income tax, and any TDS on this account will be done away with. I propose to reduce TCS rate on the sale of overseas tour program package from the current 5% and 20% to 2% without any stipulation of amount. I propose to reduce TCS rate for pursuing education and for medical purposes under the Liberalized Remittance Scheme, popularly known as LRS, from 5% to 2%. Supply of manpower services is proposed to be specifically brought within the ambit of payment to contractors for the purpose of TDS to avoid ambiguity. Thus, TDS on these services will be at the rate of either 1% or 2% only. I propose a scheme for small taxpayers, wherein a rule-based automated process will enable obtaining a lower or nil deduction certificate instead of filing an application with the assessing officer. For the ease of taxpayer holding securities in multiple companies, I propose to enable depositories to accept Form 15G or Form 15H from the investor and provide it directly to various relevant companies. I propose to extend time available for revising returns from 31st December to up to 31st March with the payment of a nominal fee. I also propose to stagger the timeline for filing of tax returns. Individuals with ITR 1 and ITR 2 returns will continue to file till 31st July, and non-audit business cases or trusts are proposed to be allowed time till 31st August. TDS on sale of immovable property by a non-resident is proposed to be deducted and deposited through resident buyers and his or her PAN-based challan instead of requiring a TAN, which is a temporary accounting number. To address practical issues of small taxpayers like students, young professionals, tech employees, relocated NRIs, and such others, I propose to introduce a one-time 6-month foreign asset disclosure scheme for these taxpayers to disclose income or assets below a certain size. This scheme would be applicable for two categories of taxpayers, namely A, who did not disclose their overseas income or assets, and B, who disclosed their overseas income and or paid due tax but could not declare the asset acquired. For category A, the limit of undisclosed income or asset is proposed to be up to 1 crore rupees. They need to pay 30% of fair market value of asset or 30% of undisclosed income as tax and 30% as additional income tax in lieu of penalty, and would thereby get immunity from prosecution. For category B, asset value is proposed to be up to 5 crore rupees. Here, immunity from both penalty and prosecution will be available with a payment of fee of 1 lakh rupees. Rationalizing penalty and prosecution. Multiplicity of proceedings are hindrance to the ease of doing business. I propose to integrate assessment and penalty proceedings by way of a common order for both. There will be no interest liability on the taxpayer on the penalty amount for the period of appeal before the first appellate authority, irrespective of the outcome of appeal process. Further, quantum of prepayment is being reduced from 20% to 10% and will continue to be calculated only on core tax demand. As an additional measure for reducing litigation, I propose to allow taxpayers to update their returns even after reassessment proceedings have been initiated, and an additional 10% tax rate over and above the rate applicable for the relevant year. The assessing officer will then use only this updated return in his proceedings. There is already a framework for immunity from penalty and prosecution in the cases of underreporting. I propose to apply this framework for immunity to misreporting too. However, in such a case, the taxpayer will need to pay 100% of the tax amount as an additional income tax over and above the tax and interest due. Penalties for certain technical defaults, such as failure to get accounts audited, non-furnishing of transfer pricing audit report, and default in furnishing statement for financial transactions, are proposed to be converted into fee. I propose to rationalize prosecution framework under Income Tax Act while maintaining a careful balance for deterrence in some serious offense. Non-production of books of account and documents and requirement of TDS payment where payment is made in kind are being decriminalized. Further, minor offenses will attract fine only. The remaining prosecutions will be graded commensurate with the quantum of offense. They will entail only simple imprisonment with maximum imprisonment reduced to 2 years and power to courts to convert even those into fines. There is no penalty. There is no penalty presently for non-disclosure of non-immovable foreign assets with aggregate value less than 20 lakh rupees. I propose to also provide them with immunity from prosecution with retrospective effect from 1/10/2024. Cooperatives. Deduction is already allowed to a primary cooperative society engaged in supplying milk, oilseeds, fruits or vegetables raised or grown by its members. I propose to extend this deduction to also include supply of cattle feed and cotton seed produced by its members. I propose to allow inter-cooperative society dividend income as deduction under the new tax regime to the extent it is further distributed to its members. I further propose to allow exemption for a period of 3 years to dividend income received by a notified national cooperative federation on their investments made in companies up to 31/1/2026. This exemption would be allowed only for dividends further distributed to its member cooperatives. Supporting IT sector as India's growth engine. India is a global leader in software development services, IT-enabled services, knowledge process outsourcing services, and contract R&D services relating to software development. These businesses and their segments are quite interconnected with each other. All these services are proposed to be clubbed under a single category of information technology services with a common safe harbor margin of 15.5% applicable to all. The threshold for availing safe harbor for IT services is being enhanced substantially from 300 crore rupees to 2,000 crore rupees. Safe harbor for IT services shall be approved by an automated rule-driven process without any need for tax officer to examine and accept the application. Once applied by an IT services company, the same safe harbor can be continued for a period of 5 years at a stretch at its choice. For IT services companies who want to conclude advanced pricing agreement, APA, I propose to fast-track unilateral APA process for IT services and endeavor to conclude it within a period of 2 years. The period of 2 years can be extended by a further period of 6 months on taxpayers' request. I propose to extend the facility of modified returns available to the entity entering APA to its associated entities also. Attracting global business and investment. Recognizing the need to enable critical infrastructure and boost investment in data centers, I propose to provide tax holiday till 2047 to any foreign company that provides cloud services to customers globally by using data center services from India. It will, however, need to provide services to Indian customers through an Indian reseller entity. I also propose to provide a safe harbor of 15% on cost in case the company providing data center services from India is a related entity. To harness the efficiency of just-in-time logistics for electronic manufacturing, I propose to provide safe harbor to non-residents for component warehousing in a bonded warehouse at a profit margin of 2% of the invoice value. The resultant tax of about 0.7% will be much lower than in competing jurisdictions. To provide fillip to toll manufacturing in India, I propose to provide exemption from income tax for 5 years to any non-resident who provides capital goods, equipment, or tooling to any toll manufacturer in a bonded zone. To encourage vast pool of global talent to work in India for a longer period of time, I propose to provide exemption to global, non-India sourced income of a non-resident expert for a stay period of 5 years under notified schemes. I propose to provide exemption from minimum alternate tax, the MAT, to all non-residents who pay tax on presumptive basis. Tax administration. I propose to constitute a joint committee of Ministry of Corporate Affairs and Central Board of Direct Taxes for incorporating the requirements of income computation and disclosure standards, the ICDS, in the Indian Accounting Standards, Ind AS itself. Separate accounting requirement based on ICDS will be done away with from the tax year 27-28. To support Prime Minister Modi's vision of homegrown accounting and advisory firms to become global leaders, I propose to rationalize the definition of accountant for the purposes of safe harbor rules. Other tax proposals. Change in taxation of buyback was brought in to address the improper use of buyback route by promoters. In the interest of minority shareholders, I propose to tax buyback for all types of shareholders as capital gains. However, to disincentivize misuse of tax arbitrage, promoters will pay an additional buyback tax. This will make effective tax 22% for corporate promoters. For non-corporate promoters, the effective tax will be 30%. TCS rate for sellers of specific goods, namely alcoholic liquor, scrap, and minerals, will be rationalized to 2%, and that on tendu leaves will be reduced from 5% to 2%. I propose to raise the STT on futures to 0.05% from the present 0.02%. STT on options premium and exercise of options are both proposed to be raised to 0.15% from the present rate of 0.1% and 0.125% respectively. We reformed the taxation landscape for corporates in 2019 by providing them a simplified regime with lower tax rate so that they could productively focus on business rather than on claim of deductions and exemptions. To encourage companies to shift to the new regime, set off of brought forward MAT credit, minimum alternate tax credit, is proposed to be allowed to companies only in the new regime. Set off using available MAT credit is proposed to be allowed to an extent of 1/4 of the tax liability in the new regime. MAT is proposed to be made final tax, so there will be no further credit accumulation from 1st April 2026. In line with this change, the rate of final tax is being reduced to 14% from the current MAT rate of 15%. the brought forward VAT credit of taxpayers accumulated till 30th March 2026 will continue to be available to them for set-off as above. Indirect taxes. I shall now take up proposals related to indirect taxes. My proposals for customs and central excise aim to further simplify the tariff structure, support domestic manufacturing, promote export competitiveness, and correct inversion in duty. To continue weeding out long-continuing customs duty exemptions, I propose to remove certain exemptions on items which are being manufactured in India or where the imports are negligible. Similarly, to further simplify the process of ascertaining the rate of duty applicable on a particular item, I propose to incorporate certain effective rates in various customs notifications to the tariff schedule itself. I shall now take up sector-specific proposals. Promotion of exports of marine, leather, and textile products. I propose to increase the limit for duty-free imports of specified inputs used for processing seafoods for export from the current 1% to 3% of FOB value of the previous year's export turnover. I also propose to allow duty-free imports of specified inputs, which is currently available for exports of leather or synthetic footwear, to exports of shoe uppers as well. I propose to extend the time period for export of final product from the existing 6 months to 1 year for exporters of leather or textile garments, leather or synthetic footwear, and other leather products. Energy transition and security. I propose to extend the basic customs duty exemption given to capital goods used for manufacturing lithium-ion cells for batteries to those used for manufacturing lithium-ion cells for battery energy storage systems also. I propose to exempt basic customs duty on import of sodium antimonate for use in manufacture of solar glass. Nuclear power. I propose to extend the existing basic customs duty exemption on imports of goods required for nuclear power projects till the year 2035 and expand it for all nuclear plants irrespective of their capacity. Critical minerals. It is proposed to provide basic customs duty exemption to the import of capital goods required for the processing of critical minerals in India. Biogas blended CNG. I propose to exclude the entire value of biogas while calculating the central excise duty payable on biogas blended CNG. Civil and defense aviation. I propose to exempt basic customs duty on components and parts required for the manufacture of civilian training and other aircrafts. It is proposed to exempt basic customs duty on raw materials imported for the manufacture of parts of aircraft to be used in maintenance, repair, or overall requirements by units in the defense sector. Electronics. To deepen value addition in the consumer electronics sector, I propose to exempt basic customs duty on specified parts used in the manufacture of microwave ovens. Special economic zone. To address the concerns arising about utilization of capacity by manufacturing units in the special economic zones due to global trade disruptions, I propose as a special one-time measure to facilitate sales by eligible manufacturing units in SEZs to the domestic tariff area at concessional rates of duty. The quantity of such sales will be limited to a prescribed proportion of their exports. Necessary regulatory changes will be undertaken to operationalize the measures while ensuring level playing field for the units working in the DTA. Ease of living. To rationalize the customs duty structure for goods imported for personal use, I propose to reduce the tariff rate on all dutiable goods imported for personal use from 20% to 10%. To provide relief to patients, particularly those suffering from cancer, I propose to exempt basic customs duty on 17 drugs or medicines. I propose also to add 7 more rare diseases for the purposes of exempting import duties on personal imports of drugs, medicines, and food for special medical purposes used in their treatment. Customs process. India's role and share in the global trade is poised for a major leap in line with our ambition and journey towards Vikasit Bharat. In this regard, I propose many measures for custom processes to have minimal intervention for smoother and faster movement of goods and greater certainty to the trade. Trust-based systems. I propose to enhance duty deferral period for Tier 2 and Tier 3 authorized economic operators, known as AEOs, from 15 days to 30 days. I propose to provide eligible manufacturer importers the same duty deferral facility. This should encourage them to get themselves accredited as a full-fledged Tier 3 AEO in due course. To provide greater certainty and for better business planning, I propose to extend validity period of advance ruling binding on customs from the present 3 years to 5 years. In the spirit of the whole of government approach, government agencies will be encouraged to leverage AEO accreditation for preferential treatment in clearing their cargo. Regular importers with trusted long-standing supply chains will be recognized in the risk system so that the need for verification of their cargo every time can be minimized. Export cargo using electronic sealing. Export cargo using electronic sealing will be provided through clearance from the factory premises to the ship. For import of goods not needing any compliance, filing of bill of entry by a trusted importer and arrival of goods will automatically notify customs for completing their clearance formalities. This will enable goods to be released immediately on arrival. The customs warehouse framework will be transformed into a warehouse operator-centric system with a self-declarations, electronic tracking, and risk-based audit. These reforms will move away from the current system of officer-dependent approvals and reduce transaction delays and compliance costs. Ease of doing business. Approvals required for cargo clearance from various government agencies will be seamlessly processed through a single and interconnected digital window by the end of the financial year. Processes involved in clearance of food, drugs, plant, and animal and wildlife products, accounting for about 70% of interdicted cargo, will be operationalized on this system by April 2026 itself. For goods not having any compliance requirement, clearance will be done by customs immediately after online registration is completed by the importer, subject to the payment of duty. Customs integrated system will be rolled out in 2 years as a single integrated and scalable platform for all customs processes. Utilization of non-intrusive scanning with advanced imaging and AI technology for risk assessment will be expanded in a phased manner with the objective to scan every container across all the major ports. New export opportunities to support Indian fishermen to fully harness the economic value of marine resources beyond our territorial waters. The following measures will be taken. A. Fish catch by an Indian fishing vessel in exclusive economic zone or on the high seas will be made free of duty. Landing of such fish on foreign port will be treated as export of goods. Safeguards will be put in place to prevent misuse during fish catch, transit or transshipment. To support aspirations of India's small businesses, artisans and startups to access global markets through e-commerce, I am pleased to announce complete removal of the current value cap of 10 lakh rupees per consignment on courier exports. In addition, handling of rejected and returned consignments will be improved with effective use of technology for identifying such consignments. I propose to revise provisions governing baggage clearance during international travel to address genuine concerns of passengers. The revised rules will enhance duty-free allowances in line with the present-day travel realities and provide clarity in temporary carriage of goods brought in or taken out. There are honest taxpayers who are willing to settle disputes by paying all their dues, but they get deterred due to negative connotation associated with penalty. They will now be able to close cases by paying an additional amount in lieu of penalty. Honorable Speaker, sir, with this, I commend the budget to this august House. Jai Hind. One and a half hours.
Item number 3, माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी.
Item number 2, sir.
3.
Sir, with your permission, I rise to lay on the table of the following statements under Section 3, 1 of the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act of 2003. Medium-term fiscal policy cum fiscal policy strategy statement and macroeconomic framework statement.
Item number 4, माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी.
Sir, with your permission, I move for leave to introduce the Finance Bill 2026.
प्रश्न ये कि विधेयक को पुनर्स्थापित करने की अनुमति प्रदान की जाए. जो सदस्य इस पक्ष में हाँ गए, जो सदस्य विरोध में ना गए, मेरे विचार में निर्णय हाँ वालों के पक्ष में, हाँ वालों के पक्ष में अनुमति प्रदान की जाती है. माननीय मंत्री जी, अब विधेयक पुनर्स्थापित करें.
Sir, I introduce the bill.
माननीय सदस्यगण, आपको सूचित किया जाता है कि माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी के बजट भाषण की कॉपी पब्लिकेशन काउंटर पर ली जाती है. बजट भाषण और बजट से संबंधित दस्तावेज आपके मोबाइल फोन और मेंबर पोर्टल्स पर ही उपलब्ध है. सभा की कार्रवाई कल सोमवार दिनांक 2 फरवरी 2026 को प्राप्त 11 बजे तक के लिए स्थगित की जाती है.
Namaste and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to this press briefing on the ongoing state visit of the President of European Union Council, His Excellency Antonio Costa, and President of the European Union Commission, Her Excellency Ursula von der Leyen. For this press briefing, we have with us Honorable Commerce Minister of India, Shri Piyush Goyal, and he is joined by Foreign Secretary, Shri Vikram Mishri, as also Commerce Secretary, Shri Rajesh Agarwal. With that, I invite Foreign Secretary to make his opening remarks. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, indeed. Good evening to all of you. First of all, it's a privilege to have with us for this briefing the Honorable Minister for Commerce and Industry, Shri Piyush Goyal. We were expecting to be joined at the briefing also by the European Commissioner for Trade and Economic Security, Mr. Maros Sefcovic, but since the previous engagements ran a little late, he had to unfortunately go for his next scheduled meeting, and that is why he is not here. Let me make a few quick points with regard to the outcome of this truly historic visit that is currently underway. As you are aware, the President of the European Council, His Excellency Mr. Antonio Costa, and the President of the European Commission, Her Excellency Mrs. Ursula von der Leyen, are on a state visit to India at the invitation of Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. Both the presidents were jointly chief guests at the Republic Day celebrations yesterday. This is the first time ever that we've had European leaders as guests of honor for our Republic Day. The leaders from the EU are accompanied by the EU High Representative for Foreign Policy and Security and Vice President of the European Commission, Her Excellency Ms. Kaja Kallas, the EU Commissioner for Trade and Economic Security, as I said, Mr. Maros Sefcovic, and other senior leading officers from the Commission and the Council. Yesterday, Honorable Rashtrapati Ji received both the presidents at Rashtrapati Bhavan. The dignitaries then witnessed the Republic Day parade as guests of honor. For the first time ever, there was a EU contingent, in fact consisting of European Union military staff and the European Union naval operations, Atalanta and Aspidus, representatives from both of these operations participating in the Republic Day parade. The EU leaders also joined Rashtrapati Ji and Prime Minister in the evening at the at-home reception at Rashtrapati Bhavan. Today, Presidents Costa and von der Leyen and Prime Minister Modi co-chaired the 16th India-EU Summit. They held detailed bilateral talks both in the restricted format and in the delegation level format. Prime Minister hosted a luncheon in honor of the visiting presidents. There were several key documents that were signed and exchanged before the leaders, including, as you have all come to know by now, the joint announcement on the conclusion of the negotiations of a landmark and historic India-EU free trade agreement, and equally important security and defense partnership agreement between the two sides, and an MOU on comprehensive framework on cooperation on mobility, among others. Prime Minister and President von der Leyen also addressed the India-EU Business Forum in Bharat Mandapam, where more than 100 CEOs from both the sides participated. The Business Forum comes at a timely moment, straight in the wake of the completion of negotiations of the India-EU FTA, because we will need the businesses on the two sides to quickly translate the intention of the FTA into concrete outcomes. The Honorable Vice President of India would also be meeting with both the distinguished guests. And later today, President Costa and President von der Leyen will be calling on Rashtrapatiji, who will also host a banquet in honor of the visiting dignitaries. Let me very quickly give you a broad context and flavor of this visit and the outcomes thereof. The outcomes are deeply strategic in nature, and I would urge you to look at each of the outcomes for its specific significance in the overall scheme of things between India and the European Union. Over the last decade, relations between India and the European Union have grown steadily. They have grown not just in scale, but in significance as well, as evidence from the level and the frequency of contacts and engagements between the two sides. In our fast-changing world, the strategic partnership between India and the EU has a value beyond the bilateral context, particularly as we witness shifts in the global economic, technological, and strategic landscape. As the world's second and fourth largest markets, India and the EU also have very high stakes on all critical global challenges of the day, including overdependence and concentration of global manufacturing and supply chains on a limited set of geographies, an ineffective multilateral system, emerging multipolarity, and growing protectionist tendencies in different parts of the world. And therefore, as two large pluralistic democracies and open market economies, our leaders have resolved to take this very strategic partnership forward for mutual benefit and for the greater good of the global population as a whole. Our relations got a very big boost last year with the historic visit of the EU College of Commissioners, which facilitated a whole-of-government approach to our most immediate priorities, which include some of the outcomes today. And in fact, we've seen very substantial outcomes today, underlining the strategic importance that both sides attach to the bilateral relationship and to further elevating the India-EU strategic partnership. Today's summit, the 16th India-EU summit, was held after a gap of about 5.5 years. And as I said, it is a milestone, not only in terms of the outcomes, but also the quality of the outcomes, but also their numbers and the potential impact that they have. The leaders announced the successful conclusion of negotiations of the India-EU FTA. Trade and economic ties are central to this strategic partnership. EU as a bloc is one of the largest bilateral trading partners of India. Bilateral trade in 24-25 was close to $136 billion, with Indian exports of $76 billion and imports of $60 billion. Services trade between the two sides is around $83 billion. The FTA that was whose negotiations were concluded and announced today will have a transformative role beyond boosting bilateral trade. They will boost investment, strengthening of supply chain integration, and support of sustainable growth on both sides. It is important to note that despite these obviously impressive numbers that are already there in the bilateral context, there has always been enormous room for growth in the bilateral relationship, room that was hitherto unexplored and which will now be leveraged to mutual benefit by the two sides. A second very important outcome of today's meeting, especially in the overall strategic context of the relationship, is the EU-India Security and Defense Partnership, which was signed and exchanged today. While we have defense and security partnerships with several individual EU member states, this framework agreement on security and defense issues between India and the EU will be a first. It will bolster our engagements in maritime security, on defense industry, on cyberspace, and on counterterrorism. Particularly, this would allow Indian defense companies to benefit from the opportunities arising from the EU's own very significant defense initiatives that are underway. The two sides have also announced the launch of negotiations for a security of information agreement, which again demonstrates the long-term and strategic view that the two sides are taking of their relationship. A third outcome that I would want to invite your attention to is the document towards 2030, an India-EU joint comprehensive strategic agenda, which is a new roadmap to reinforce our strategic partnership and set the trajectory for advancing the relations across multiple pillars. These pillars include prosperity and stability, technology and innovation, security and defense, connectivity, and people-to-people ties for the next 5 years. I would urge you to go into the details of this particular roadmap to see the depth of intensity and the breadth of coverage that we intend to bring to this relationship. Finally, the two sides also concluded an MOU on comprehensive framework on cooperation on mobility. This is again the first such mobility-related agreement that we are concluding at the EU level with any partner. For the EU, this is a first with any partner for them. The MOU will facilitate and streamline safe, regular migration, support skill development, and ease the movement of highly skilled workers, students, researchers, and seasonal workers who happen to be in occupations in demand between the two sides. The two leaders, in fact, emphasized that some of the strongest relationships between the two sides, between India and Europe, are built by the people-to-people contacts. Today, the Indian diaspora in the EU is over 1 million people. Indian professionals in Europe are making notable contributions in several fields, including information technology, healthcare, engineering, and finance. There are more than 100,000 Indian students in Europe who continue to pursue higher education in leading universities in the EU. In addition to these agreements that I have outlined, there were a number of other important understandings that were reached. This includes the announcement of projects under the India-EU trilateral partnership, the renewal of the India-EU agreement for scientific and technological cooperation until 2030, the administrative arrangement on advanced e-signatures and seals, an MOU between the Reserve Bank of India and the European Securities and Market Authority, an administrative arrangement on cooperation in disaster risk management, and again, very, very importantly, a decision to launch exploratory talks on the association of India with Horizon Europe. Horizon Europe is the world's largest public scientific research program, and India's association with this program can bring us great benefits in the future. In addition, we've constituted an India-EU task force on green hydrogen and set up a EU pilot legal gateway office in India to enhance skill mobility and launch of negotiations, as I said earlier, for an India-EU security of information agreement. So, to conclude, the visit of Presidents Costa and von der Leyen to India is emblematic of our trusted and strategic partnership. We are confident that this visit will instill further momentum to deepening of India-EU ties, create more business opportunities, lead to job creation, and intensified cooperation in education and scientific research, opportunities for students, enhanced mobility for professionals and highly skilled workers, and open a new chapter in security and defense cooperation between India and the EU. I want to end by citing two quotations from the leaders at the meeting. President von der Leyen said that the world is waiting for more from EU and India. So this was really an expression of the potential that is there in this deeply, deeply strategic relationship that the two sides are now beginning to explore much more fully. And Prime Minister said during his intervention during the talks that the EU and India have put in place a blueprint for shared prosperity. I think these are the indicators of the sentiment behind the meeting today. again an indication of the strategic significance of this visit and of the outcomes that have marked this visit. I'll stop here. Honorable Minister would like to brief you further on the key outcome.
Thank you, Vikram. And I'd like to begin by congratulating 1.4 billion brothers and sisters in India. 140 करोड़ देशवासियों को बधाई देना चाहूँगा. Just like Foreign Secretary just articulated in great detail, this visit is extraordinary. It goes far beyond a free trade agreement. It goes far beyond the humongous potential that is being unlocked with the free trade agreement. It is truly a statement of deep partnership and the strategic intent of the European Union and India coming together in a multitude of areas to strengthen our partnership, to work together for the shared prosperity and a better future for 1/3 of humanity. It is a reflection that when 25% of global trade decides to strengthen the strategic partnership, including with the free trade agreement, it unlocks the doors to defense cooperation, greater investments, to cooperation in the field of innovation and science, to further integration of financial markets. And therefore, I would term this visit, as very rightly pointed out by the Honorable Foreign Secretary, as a game-changing and transformational visit in terms of the strategic partnership between European Union and India. And therefore, I think congratulations are in order to Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, to Her Excellency Ms. Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, and His Excellency Mr. Antonio da Costa, the President of the European Council. They have provided visionary leadership, which has further been strengthened with colleagues from almost all parts of government in both the European Union and India. Everybody playing their role to prepare the roadmap and lay the foundation for a very powerful economic, geopolitical, and strategic partnership of the 21st century. We are also very pleased to have concluded negotiations on, as Ms. von der Leyen herself has articulated, the mother of all deals, a free trade agreement which covers 25% of global trade. It is our 8th free trade agreement under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, each and every one of them with developed nations and collectively reflecting an agreement between India and 36 developed nations. With these 27 of the European Union, 4 from the EFTA, 31 and 6 more, 37 developed nations and India have entered into free trade agreements in a short span of 4 years under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Friends, this breakthrough in the EU-India trade relations comes after 20 years. You're all aware the discussions were launched in 2006 16 rounds of negotiations were held. Sadly, in 2013, efforts were aborted, and almost nobody ever imagined the European Union and India being able to come up with such a robust partnership framework as has been finalized by our leaders today. In fact, when we relaunched negotiations in mid-2022 and laid the initial foundational work, prepared our game plan and way forward, we had elections in India and then in the European Union through 2024. So the heavy lifting for this FTA really started after the historic visit of the European Union Trade Commissioners led by Ms. von der Leyen in February 2025. And I think it's been the labor of love of the entire government in European Union and India, burning the midnight oil, persevering, working in a spirit of cooperation, India negotiating with self-confidence, both sides agreeing to focus on what is good for both set of countries, the European Union and India, leaving the sensitive issues aside, and therefore coming up with a very balanced, equitable and fair free trade agreement, which is a win-win for all sections of industry, both in India and European Union, opening up plethora of opportunities for investment, opening up markets which are complementary, with India gaining access significantly in labor-intensive industries like marine products, chemicals, footwear and leather, plastic rubber goods, textiles, apparel and clothing, gems and jewelry, furniture, sports goods, toys, and the European Union industries gaining access to the large and fastest growing economy of India in innovation, technology, sectors of precision engineering, and areas where India continues to look for partnerships and technologies from across the world. Friends, this agreement covers almost 99% of the total exports that are sent from India to the European Union, and about 97% plus of the total exports from European Union to India. Something which is unprecedented and reflects the strength and the depth of this agreement. We have tried to address the asymmetry in economic development between the two nations, with different per capita incomes, with transitional periods, but ultimately focusing on the complementary strengths of both economies, such that all 28 countries will stand to benefit. Collectively, the European Union today imports nearly $6.5 trillion worth of goods and nearly $3 trillion worth of services. India plays a very small role in that. Our total exports are currently just about 1.5% of the goods imported into Europe, and barely 2.5% of the services import into Europe. With this massive opening up of opportunities, The European Union has also opened up many new sectors. India has opened up many new sectors in the services space. We can see a big thrust to the services sector. As I said, on marine products, almost 94% of the tariff lines and almost the entire value of goods that are exported are going to get duty-free access. As I said before, areas like textiles, apparel, home decor, furnishing, where India has very serious labor-intensive interests, 100% of the European market will be open for business from day one. And I can give you more details, but we have furnished those details to all the members of the press, whether it's furniture and lighting or other consumable goods. Almost all of our exports are going to get duty-free access from day one. Likewise, for toys, for sports goods, for railway components, aircraft parts, also in leather and footwear. These are areas which are of significant interest to India. Similarly, India will open its doors for greater import of auto components, automobiles, wines, spirits, and other areas of interest to the European Union, with both sides having ensured that sensitive items are kept out of the ambit or given sufficient transition period for adjustment of the industry and economic cycles. For example, from the context of the European Union, their interest was more in larger automobiles, since they do not make automobiles which are under 15 or 20,000 euros in big measure. We in India produce largely automobiles which are smaller in size and lower in cost. So we've been able to come to a very amicable understanding where the auto industry in Germany is very happy, getting greater access in a phased manner in areas of their interest, while Indian industry is very happy that we've been able to protect their areas of interest in the smaller and low-cost automobile sector. And this is the story that's been repeated in sector after sector. So I believe we are offering today to the world an agreement which is unprecedented in scale, in terms of market access. It will support Make in India and support industry in the European Union. It opens up plethora of opportunities for investments on both sides. We have seen large investments flow from Europe to India, which can now grow manifold. At the CEO Business Forum, one of our industry conglomerates was mentioning that they have already invested $70 billion in Europe. And therefore, I see this as a partnership where both sides will get a lot of opportunities in trade, in investment. It provides stability of policy, predictability of tariffs and rates, and it provides certainty to business, which is the sine qua non to successful trade and engagement between two large economies. Europe is, of course, a $20 trillion plus economy. India, being the fastest growing large economy, will become a $30 trillion plus economy by 2047 and catch up very rapidly with the developed world. And together, we will work for the shared prosperity and better future for 2 billion people in Europe and India. Thank you very much, friends, and I look forward to a very successful journey through trade, through investments, through all the various areas articulated by Foreign Secretary, be it mobility, be it our strategic and defense partnership, be it our innovation partnership, be it our partnership on scientific discovery, research and development, being our partnership to further our interests in multilateral organizations where we work together for the good of humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We now open the floor for some questions. Please raise your number or your hand and then I'll identify you. Can we go there? 183.
Hi, sir. My name is Siddhant Sibal from Beyond. To the Minister, sir, how do you see this FTA being implemented? Any timeline, because it has to go through a legal scrubbing through the Parliament as well? And do you think that the signing of the FTA, whenever it happens, will give impetus to other FTAs, including the US FTA? To the Foreign Secretary, sir, it is on the IMEC, how much the conversation was. And to the Commerce Secretary, sir, my question is, was CBAM part of it or is it excluded?
Well, I think every agreement stands on its own legs, and this is a wonderful agreement. It'll be taken up for legal scrubbing on a fast-track basis, as we discussed today, and translated into 24 languages simultaneously. We do hope that we should be able to celebrate the entry into force of this agreement within calendar 2026 itself.
I think on connectivity, on IMEC you mentioned, as you know, connectivity is a very important thread in the agenda between India and the EU. And indeed, it was on the agenda today. There was a discussion about it. And there was consensus on the fact that the IMEC initiative is one that should be taken forward. And we should now graduate from the working level meetings that have taken place to higher level meetings, culminating in a summit of the IMEC member countries. So between Europe and India, we are united on this, and we will take this forward with the other collaborators within IMEC.
Can we have a question there?
So my question on CBAM.
Thanks. On CBAM, as you are aware, CBAM is a horizontal regulation which is applicable to all partner countries across the globe. Under FTA also, there are certain provisions that we have agreed under CBAM. One, a technical dialogue has been agreed to be set up which will address the pathway for our industries to access the market despite of the CBAM regulation being there. We'll be working together to see that the verifiers for CBAM in India are also accredited by the use agency so that our industry are able to access them. We will also be working together to see and understand the technical processes through which this carbon CBAM measurement will be done in both the economies. And three, we also will provide, this group will also provide that in whatever Indian carbon trading system comes into future, that will be also accounted for and plugged into their CBAM regulation to see that the industry which is part of the trading ecosystem, carbon trading pricing ecosystem in India is accounted for, their payments here or their carbon costs here are accounted for as part of the system. Further, to our larger comfort, they have given this commitment that in case they are able to bring in any flexibility under CBAM for any partner country across the world, that will automatically flow out to India also. So we do have a forward commitment. Thank you.
We'll go for a question there. 24, please.
Thank you very much, Maria Tadeo for Euronews. Minister, You have signed this deal now, and both sides agree, which is rare these days, that this is a win-win situation for both. I was wondering, however, India and the European Union share the fact that both countries were really hit by tariffs, both the European Union and now India to 50% from the Trump administration. So I wonder how much of a unifier beyond a win-win was the US president?
I don't think we even discussed this at any point of time.
Okay, 127 here.
Sir, Pranay Upadhyay from India Today, Aaj Tak. Mr. Minister, my question to you is that can you share your assessment about the possibility of job creation out of this FTA? In your assessment, how many jobs will in India will be created after this FTA? And IPR has been a sticky point for Europe's investment in India. How this FTA is going to allay or address the issue of IPR for the European investors in India?
First of all, in terms of job creation, most of us here are aware that the textile industry in India is the second largest job creator after agriculture, with nearly 40 million jobs being created in the textile sector. India, I'm giving you a context how one should view this agreement. India exports about $7 billion worth of textiles and garments to the US, to the EU every year. And the duty rates are between anywhere up to 12% on the goods that we export to EU. Now, earlier in the day, you used to always ask us, the press used to always ask us, that why is Bangladesh able to export $30 billion worth of textiles and India is such a small player? Because Bangladesh, being a least developed country, LDC, had zero duty access. And they were able to capture 30 billion out of the $250 billion market of European Union in textiles alone. Now we see before our eyes a potential to grow from 7 billion to at least 30, 35, 40 billion very quickly, being an area of strength in India. And you can imagine that if we add this kind of business only in the textile sector alone, just only in the textile sector alone, we are looking at close to 6 or 7 million jobs coming into that sector. So it has tremendous potential. The sectoral gains in various areas, particularly in the labor-intensive areas, give us tremendous potential for job creation in India. Also, we had a discussion with the European friends. They have a lot of innovative technologies, modern technologies, very high precision engineering work that is being done in factories in Europe for their own use and for the export market. But there are several markets, including India, where because of the high labor costs or the non-availability of adequate labor, they are not able to capture markets in many parts of the world like Africa or Latin America, even Asia. A joint partnership between Europe and India to co-produce, co-manufacture and leverage the technologies of Europe and the skill and talent of India working together as partners will help European companies scale up, enjoy the fruits of economies of scale, enjoy the complementarity of our two economies and create large number of jobs both in European Union and in India. So to my mind, this is a huge boost, whether for our startups, whether for our sectoral interests, whether for the economy as a whole. IPR, you are already aware, the most litigious countries on IPR are Switzerland and UK. And we have already got an IPR in both the free trade agreement that we've done with EFTA, 4-nation EFTA bloc, and with the UK. So obviously we have a very robust IPR chapter in the EU-India FTA also.
We have a question here, 187.
Sir, this is Rajesh from PTA. Sir, two small questions. Regarding CBAM, we have received certain commitments for CBAM in the FTA. But do we have any kind of provision, sir, where India can protect its domestic industry if EU will impose carbon tax under CBAM in the future? And second question is, can we share some caps, like what kind of visa caps or visa numbers EU has committed under the FTA for students and IT professionals?
He's already responded on CBAM. As far as students are concerned, they are very keen in European Union to encourage Indian students in greater measure. We have 121,000 students, 121,000 students from India already studying in EU. And there's no cap on the number of students. They would like to welcome our students to come and study in the EU, just as we would like to welcome European universities to come and set up campuses in India. And I would love to see in the future, as we have discussed, joint degrees and our European young men and women coming and working in India so that they get a flavor of the growth engine that India is and become a part of the growth journey that India and Europe will share together.
We have 238 there.
This is Deepshika from Economic Times. Sir, could you share details on the totalization agreement, because how will that play out? Will these be individual agreements separately done with the countries?
On social security, normally social security agreements are in the remit of the member states. They do not form under the remit of the European Commission. However, that's why you will see none of the EU FTAs have got any commitment under social security. This is the first FTA wherein we have brought in social security because this is an important need of India, and we have linked it to some of our forward MFN commitments under services. For first 5 years, these commitments will stand along with the nudge to the member states to move towards social security agreements. These agreements naturally has to be done bilaterally. Today we already have with 14 out of 27 member states, and we hope in next 5 years we'll have with the remaining 13 ones. Thank you.
We have a question there, 129.
So, thank you. Keshav Padmanabhan from The Print, and my question is to the Foreign Secretary. So, can you tell us or give us more details on the security and defense partnership with Indian companies now have the right to access the SAFE funding, which is roughly 150 billion euro funding that the EU announced last year for procurement? So, would Indian companies now have access to that? And just a clarification on the mobility partnership, because mobility and immigration is a competency of the member states. So, can you give us a sense of what exactly are we looking at an EU level for mobility? Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, you mentioned SAFE, which is the security action for Europe regulation, which is one of the emerging pillars of Rearm Europe, which is something that was announced last year by the European authorities. So there is obviously a resurgence or a renaissance, you might call it, of defense industry, and the realization for defense preparedness in Europe, which means that there has to be preparation on the defense industrial front. So what our understanding the India-EU security and defense partnership does, as I mentioned earlier, this is the first such overarching framework document for security and defense cooperation between the two sides. It does certainly portend a strengthening and deepening of ties between India and EU in the domains of precisely defense industry cooperation. So we would look over a period of time to be able to take part in these European initiatives with regard to defense industry. The Prime Minister made the point today that India offered a viable alternative insofar as manufacturing location or development location for defense systems was concerned, and that the EU could, in a sense, get more bang for the buck for the money that it was putting behind programs such as SAFE in the context of RIA. But more than that, more than defense industry cooperation, the partnership also expands our cooperation into areas such as maritime security, into cyber, into space awareness, space situational awareness, space security itself, and very importantly for both sides into counterterrorism. And all of these will entail increased engagements between two sides, increased engagements between the defense industries of the two sides. The Society of Indian Defense Manufacturers very recently undertook a very successful visit to Brussels to meet with their counterparts. So I think, thereby exploring opportunities for them to benefit from these various initiatives that are underway. As I mentioned, today we've also announced the launch of negotiations on an information security agreement that will be a complement to this. And once an information security agreement comes into place, as you can imagine, the ground is prepared for more sensitive cooperation in the field of defense going forward. And on the comprehensive framework for cooperation on mobility, yes, you're right. Mobility is a member state competence. It's not an EU competence. But what this MOU would do is that it would, in a sense, provide guidance and it would facilitate authorization of things like long stay visas and residence permits for Indian nationals for the purpose of studies that Indian students might want to make for at least 1 year or for the duration of the studies where this is shorter. So it's for that period and shorter where this framework would come into place. If there are longer frameworks, then of course they go back to individual member state competencies. The same goes for research or for other types of hosting agreements. So there are areas where applicable EU member state national laws will apply, and there are areas where this agreement will facilitate shorter term programs.
You have a question there, 214.
Thank you. Andres Kipani, Financial Times. I have the same question as my colleague from Politico here. Building on what Commerce Secretary Agrawal said about CBAM, was India still a big win for India in this trade deal?
The European Union has come in with a new set of proposals on steel, and we have agreed in good faith to work together towards a very preferential treatment as a free trade agreement partner, so that India gets a better deal than most other countries with whom the EU does not have an FTA. And I do believe that it will be resolved satisfactorily over a period of time, since it has to go through the motions over the next 6 or 8 months.
We have a question, number 17. One last question.
No, it was the same question as my colleague from it.
Okay, number 9. Yeah, please.
Also already answered before, so I'll...
Okay, then I'll come to number 2.
Okay, thank you. I'm lucky. Okay, Mattia Bagnoli answered the National Italian News Agency. I have a question on the defense partnership as well. You said that this partnership open up the opportunity for scaling up cooperation with Europe on that sense. But are you ready then to scale back or scale down, so to speak, your cooperation with Russia in defense? Are these two things going sort of on track, on par, or are two completely separate things? And secondly, on President Costa mentioned at his presser that you also spoke about Ukraine, and I would like to know on your view on this. Was also that part of the conversation when we talk about defense and security? Thank you.
So on the defense security and defense partnership, as you're aware, any agreement is entered into between two sides when both sides see mutual benefit in it. And there are mutual benefits in this agreement. There is mutual interest in this agreement, and there are advantages that both sides see by entering into this agreement, and that's why this agreement has been entered into today. The issue about India's relationship with Russia is something on which we have spoken publicly on several occasions. There is a historical context for that. I don't think we have the time today to dilate on that. But these are two things that stand on their own and that go forward on their own. Insofar as Ukraine is concerned, yes, it was discussed between the leaders today. The European leaders shared their perspective, their concerns with regard to the ongoing conflict. And Prime Minister indicated to them that he had been in very close contact with leaders from both countries, from Russia as well as from Ukraine. We in India have always made our point of view very clear on this. We favor a negotiated solution between the parties most closely concerned with this conflict. The Prime Minister himself has played a role in this by advocating this to both leaders every time that he has met them. He has publicly stated that India is ready to do whatever is needed to be done in order to support the outcomes from such a negotiated solution, and that we are interested in seeing the earliest possible cessation of this conflict that has been going on for nearly 4 years now. So these are the main points of the discussion.
Thank you, sir. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the close of this press conference. Thank you.
Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to this press conference on Economic Survey 2025-26. The Union Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, tabled the Economic Survey 25-26 in the Parliament a short while ago. प्लीज अभी बाद में इसको बांटिएगा, हाँ प्लीज रख दीजिए, कुछ रख दो, बैठ जाओ. To brief us more on the key highlights of economic survey, we have with us Chief Economic Advisor Shri V. Anant Nageshwaran ji. My warm welcome to you, sir. I welcome Senior Economic Advisor Ms. Chandni Raina, Economic Advisor Shri Chanchal C. Sarkar, Economic Advisor Dr. Anuradha Guru, and Economic Advisor Dr. Rosemary Abraham. Welcome to all of you. Today's press conference will go as follows. First, the Chief Economic Advisor will give a presentation on the key narratives from the Economic Survey 25-26, followed by a question and answer session. Over to Chief Economic Advisor, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and my colleagues, friends. It's a pleasure to stand in front of you and present the economic survey for 25-26 again. And wish you all a very happy and healthy 2026. We have 11 more months to go. So may the year be blessed with happiness and good health for all of you. This economic survey's cover actually symbolizes the key message that we have on the importance of manufacturing and exports for India's future growth in a very fragmented world and a fractious global environment. The survey takes you through 5 parts, the presentation as well, our current economic performance, and what are our priorities for the next 25 years, and how are we going to pursue them in the global context, which is somewhat unpredictable and even dangerous. And therefore, what kind of preparation as a country, as a society, we need to make to be able to achieve our priorities in a difficult global environment. And then we conclude. First, India is an indeed oasis of macro stability in otherwise a turbulent world. Numbers speak for themselves. Our GDP for this financial year is estimated, this is all IMF forecast, may differ slightly from what MOSPI has told us. IMF predicts 7.3% for the year ending March 2026. We have 7.4 from MOSPI. And the fund forecasts 6.4% for the next 2 years, 26-27 and 27-28. You will hear our numbers later. But the important thing is whether it is for the current financial year or the future, our India's growth numbers stand out in comparison to any other part of the world. And that is why we call India a oasis of economic performance in the global scenario. And if you look at the last few years in comparison to pre-COVID average, real GDP growth pre-COVID was 6.4%, and in FY25 was 6.5%. And this year, as I said, MOSPI is predicting 7.4%. Private final consumption expenditure growth is 7% for this year, on top of 7.2% last year. And in real terms, gross fixed capital formation is going to be a lot better than FY25, and definitely much better than the banking and corporate balance sheet crisis-ridden 2012-2020 period, when it grew only 6.3% on average per annum. More importantly, we are achieving this high growth rates, consumption and investment spending amidst very moderate inflation environment. This year, it is projected to be about 1.7% on average so far for the first 9 months of the year, largely due to a deflationary trend in food price index. However, it's important to note that core inflation is also well behaved. If you take out gold and silver, core inflation is 2.9, well below the 4% threshold with which the headline inflation is pursued by the central bank. So we basically have benign inflation trends, which we expect to see continue in the next financial year as well. In fact, beneath all the slides, you will see the chapters in which they are covered in great detail, and we will just give you a broad brushstroke of what those chapters are saying on those relevant topics. Moving on from GDP and inflation to public finances, in 21-22, the government said we would bring down the COVID year fiscal deficit to less than half, and we are about to deliver on that this year with an estimated 4.4% of GDP as a union government fiscal deficit. More importantly, the primary deficit, which is revenue deficit minus interest payments, has come down from 5.7 and expected to be 0.8% this year. We achieved it through improvement in tax buoyancy, tax collections, while increasing and improving the quality of expenditure. Effective capex rate went up from 2.7 pre-COVID to 3.9% post-COVID as a percentage of GDP. And that is the reason why last year we got 3 credit rating upgrades, beginning with Morningstar DBRS in May, Standard & Poor's in August, R&I investment ratings from Japan in September. And so we now have BBB from S&P, BBB plus from the other 2, and also India's CAD Edge also rates Indian sovereign rating at BBB plus. External sector, the forex reserves have more than doubled, compared to 11 years ago, from 341 billion to 701 billion. While much of it is due to lately the increase in gold valuations, definitely there is an increased accretion of foreign exchange currencies as well. Therefore, the import cover has picked up to nearly a year from 8.9 months in FY15. The current account balance is very well behaved from 1.3% of GDP to now to about 0.8% in the first half of the current financial year. And external debt, which was 23.8%, is now down to 19.2%. So the external sector doesn't flash any warning signals as far as the macro picture is concerned. And if you look at the financial sector, we basically had the second decade of the millennium was marked by balance sheet troubles and repair. That is now showing up. The repair process is now well done, and the gross non-performing asset ratio is 2.2%. The net non-performing asset ratio is down from 6% in 2017-18 down to just 0.5%. But more importantly, the flow of resources to the non-government or the commercial sector, including households and businesses, and not just the credit market, but including the equity market, non-banking finance, etc. The annual growth rate in the last 5 years has been 29%. There is ample resource availability in the system for economic activity and investment spending. In the current financial year, the growth rate is 45% in the first 9 months compared to last year's 9 months. So overall, the resource availability augurs very well, and the resource mobilization as well for continued growth in investment spending and capital formation in the economy, and this is for the commercial sector, not government. Employment conditions have improved from the year when PLFS, the Periodic Labour Force Survey, was launched. 6% was the unemployment rate then, down to 3.2% in 23-24. The PLFS used to follow a July to June cycle, and that is now becoming a calendar year-based cycle. Therefore, the data for 2025 will be released sometime in March, and that is why we are showing you 23-24 data. Female labor force participation rate is up nearly 18 percentage points, and the unemployment rate in the first 9 months of the year has been steadily declining from 5.4 down to 4.9% in the last quarter. Now, in terms of other inclusive growth parameters, apart from the macro indicators, in rural development, 81% of rural households now have access to tap water. 2.9 crore houses have been constructed and 2.76 crore property cards issued under Swamitwa. When it comes to healthcare, 14.3 crores beneficiaries registered on the UBIN portal, 42.8 crore Ayushman Bharat cards issued, 1.8 plus lakh Ayushman Arogya Mandirs operational. And we include online gaming in this because it matters for mental health. So the banning of online gaming does matter for mental health and also for your wallet's health. So that is why we included the Online Gaming Act, Regulation Act of 2025 in this category. When it comes to education, there was a concern that post-COVID, because of the school shutdown for long periods, there would be a slippage in functional literacy and numerical skills. But the latest annual State of Education report does give us very encouraging signs. Reading skills in grade 3 up to grade 2 level has picked up by about 3 percentage points compared to what they were a decade ago, I'm sorry. And when it comes to numerical skills, the improvement is even more heartwarming, going from 25% to 33.7%. It is not to say that therefore nothing remains to be done. In fact, much remains to be done, but the direction of progress is quite reassuring. When it comes to enrollment, I think India has fixed that problem mostly. Now we are focusing on the quality of educational outcomes, because up to middle school level enrollment is almost 100%, up to high school it's about 80%, and up to secondary school it's about 60% or so. And in tertiary education we have a target of 50% and we are somewhere around 32%. So compared to where we were at the turn of the millennium in terms of enrollment, whether it is in school education or higher education, we have witnessed significant progress, so we can now focus more on educational outcomes. The number of educational institutions, whether it is universities, colleges, or medical seats, etc., all of them have expanded. So more details can be found in those chapters 11 to 13. Now, macro fundamentals, inclusive parameters are also backed up by digital and in terms of project execution. If you look at the project approvals by the PPP Appraisal Committee, which was barely less than 9,000 crores in FY23, now it's more than 1 lakh crores, and that too up to November only. The number of operational high-speed corridors in terms of length of kilometers in highways, just 550 kilometers, improved to 5,360 kilometers, and that too only up to December. The commissioning of railway networks from 1,500 to more than doubling to 3,100 plus. Port infrastructure having gone up in terms of cargo handled and the capacity of ports in terms of tonnage. The numbers speak for themselves. What is interesting to me when I was putting the survey together was the one on the bottom right. The growth of inland water transport as a very viable means of transporting people and goods. The growth rate of freight handled or goods handled by inland water transportation went from 18 million metric tons to 146 in the last 11 years, recording a compounded annual growth rate of 21%, and that's very impressive. So we are now tapping all sources of transportation mode to power economic activity in the country. Digital connectivity. India has a very steep decline in data costs compared to any other country in the world. Perhaps we are the cheapest, and of course, I would consider it a mixed blessing in different ways, and you will see later why it's a mixed blessing. Number of broadband subscribers has gone up from 6 crores to 100 crores. And in terms of the Department of Telecom, in terms of deregulation processes, the application approval time for centralized right-of-way portals has come down by 90% from 450 days to just 40 days. And in terms of rural connectivity, more than 13,000 towers operational, nearly 20,000 villages with 4G mobile, and 2.1 lakh gram panchayats connected with broadband. And therefore, given the good growth performance and the kind of foundation laid for sustained growth into the second half of this decade, we are now projecting FY27 growth at between 6.8 and 7.2%. So therefore, your midpoint is 7%, on top of the growth rates we have achieved post-COVID, with the most recent estimate being 7.4 for FY26. So in other words, we are projecting, notwithstanding the global situation, we are projecting on the back of domestic accomplishments and domestic reforms that the growth momentum is intact, and we will be able to grow at between 6.8 and 7.2% in real terms. We are aware that the base year revision will be announced in the end of February, and we are confident that we will be able to maintain this growth rate under the new base year and data from MOSPI. Now, having talked about the performance of the economy, which gives us a very strong foundation, we go to the part 2 of this presentation. We look at the issues of long-term importance to the Indian economy, which are covered in detail in the economic survey. First, the outcome of rising global uncertainty for the country is the effect on the capital account and therefore on the currency. As an emerging market and a capital importing country, developments in India's external account reflects the impact of the rise in global uncertainty. India's gross FDI has been growing very well. In FY26, gross FDI is at least 10% higher than last year, but net FDI has been on the weaker side, partly because of profit taking by investors who have invested in the earlier decades, and also because of the compulsion that Indian businesses face to invest overseas. So ODI by Indian businesses has also increased. So as a result, net FDI numbers are not where we would like them to be, although they are not alarming. Portfolio investors have various reasons. One is the valuation and the lack of a so-called AI story in India, and also the overall uncertainty caused by the tariff situation is holding them back from committing more money into the Indian market. But as a contrarian, when sentiment towards India is actually on the weaker side, that is when the future prospective returns will look the brightest, actually. And if you look at the currency, therefore, as a country that depends on imported capital to meet a current account deficit, even though the deficit itself is on the lower side, if capital flows become weaker, naturally the currency reflects that. And that is what we have seen in the last 1 year, with the rupee weakening against the dollar by about 6 to 7%. This is in spite of the stellar economic fundamentals we have. So it has got nothing to do with the macro picture. It is simply accounting that if you are a current account deficit country, you need to import capital. And when capital flows become weaker due to global factors, remember, in the second decade, interest rates were close to zero in the developed world. They are now between 4 and 5% as well. So the opportunity cost of investing overseas is higher. So that is what shows up in the currency, and it is not a reflection of the macroeconomic fundamentals. The second issue that we need to tackle is long-term fiscal sustainability will require consistency in center's efforts, which we have seen demonstrated in the last 5 years, and also prudence and commitment on the part of the states. The center's special assistance scheme for capital investments has incentivized states, without which their capex would be lower, and with that it is 2.4% of GDP, and the fiscal deficit, including SASCI funds, it's 3.2, and without that it's 2.8, well contained without SASCI. But overall, the goal is to bring down the ultimate combined fiscal deficit in the medium to long term to 6% of GDP. The unconditional fiscal transfers that many states are pursuing today do have a very useful short-term role. They put cash in the hands of the public, raises disposable income, and increases spending power, no doubt. However, sustaining growth will require a careful reprioritization so that short-term income support doesn't erode the very investments on which inclusive medium-term prosperity ultimately rests. This is a quote directly from the chapter. And therefore, any fiscal indiscipline at the state level is also lately casting a shadow on the sovereign borrowing cost. The 10-year bond yield is 6.7%, and a similarly rated Indonesian 10-year bond yield is 6.3%. And therefore, since India has gotten into the bond indices globally, those investors look at the general government deficit and not just the union government deficit. That is why I think it's important that states also begin to walk on the path of fiscal prudence and consolidation in the years to come. The other priority is agriculture. In fact, in the global environment that we are getting into, all three engines of the economy, agriculture, manufacturing, services, have to fire together. And they are doing that in allied areas. Livestock and fishing and agriculture have grown at more than 6 and 7% in the last 5 years. Traditional crops can match them. If they do so, agricultural GVA will be much faster than what we are experiencing, around 3 to 4% today. And the chapter goes into what are the various steps we can take, starting from rebalancing the fertilizer consumption, looking at rice and wheat procurement to encourage crop diversification for the sake of nutrition, for the sake of soil fertility, for the sake of water tables, etc. We can take a look at how we can, through policies, encourage crop diversification. So these are all the important issues we need to address to get the overall gross value addition up in agricultural sector. From agriculture, naturally, we move on to food. And this is from the National Family Health Survey 4. The 5 will be released soon, I think. But the important thing is, Indian obesity is a major issue for reaping the demographic dividend. Physical health, mental health, emotional health, all three factors are necessary apart from skilling and education for the country to be able to reap the demographic dividend. So this economic survey, while in the last 2 surveys we have focused much more on mental health, this time we also focus on the physical health aspect. And one early and easy step that the private sector can take is to allow food labeling to reflect the risks of what people are consuming. So compared to other countries in the region and globally, Indian food labeling can improve so that people can make conscious choices in what they eat, etc. And therefore, obesity is an important factor, and it will not be addressed only by government efforts. It requires citizens' consciousness and private sector cooperation as well. So when I spoke about the data cost being the lowest in the world, I said it's a mixed blessing, and here it is why. Compulsive scrolling and social comparison is linked to anxiety and depressive symptoms, and we have been covering it in the previous 2 economic surveys, and we continue to do so. But we are very happy to note that Andhra Pradesh government is contemplating restricting social media for children under 16, so is the Goan government, etc. But it is again a matter of policy and conscious choices to be made by citizens themselves, because exposure to screen time, sedentary lifestyle, ultra-processed food consumption increase the risk of anxiety and suicidal thoughts significantly among our adolescents and also in the people in the early working age population as well. And this is a silent scourge, and we need to fix that if we are going to achieve our long-term growth aspirations. Education and skilling is slightly more familiar turf for all of us, but even here the news is encouraging. A lot of us are concerned about how we will fare in the AI era. The good news is that employers actually still value soft skills, engagement, self-efficacy, working with others, adaptability, and management skills matter a lot more than technological skills. But it's important, therefore, also to prepare our youth to look at areas which are not necessarily university education driven, but could be vocational and professional skills. In other words, we have to make vocational and technical and professional skills more fashionable and respectable than we have been doing so far. And this too is a combined initiative of the industry, the private sector, households, and the government, and not just a policy matter alone. If you look at the areas which are immune to AI diffusion, these are elder care and nursing, culinary arts, advanced tool and die specialization, early special needs education, public health outreach, environmental restoration. All of them can be pursued in areas because we have shortage of skilled personnel in these areas, and they're also resistant to the diffusion of AI in terms of future employment and income earning prospects. The last economic survey had a special chapter on AI, and this survey continues that. And the issues are with respect to the following that this chapter covers: the data center resource consumption, whether it is power or water or land, the kind of financial requirements for the large language models in the current ecosystem in the Western world, and data localization for domestic value creation, of course, the macro question of mitigating the labor market impact, navigating geopolitical constraints to hardware access, including chips, and importantly, from a geopolitical security and dependability perspective, can we continue to depend on foreign models for use in public administration and critical sectors? Of course, the government is already making its position very clear. We are going to be looking at developing local models, which are underway actually, and some of it may be rolled out in the course of the AI summit next month. But these are the various trade-offs that this chapter 14 tackles. Now, this is another issue which we have been flagging in the last few economic surveys. India is committed to net zero by 2070. And India is one of the better performing countries in terms of installation of solar and wind power in the world. At the same time, if we have to become more pervasive as a share of overall energy generation, if renewable energy were to become a significant part of the energy picture, we need to understand the ramifications. The amount of material required and the energy required to therefore generate renewable energy should not be underestimated. We should go into it with open eyes, and that is what the screen shows you. It is self-explanatory. Therefore, this chapter, like in the previous occasions, does focus on adaptation, demand management, and also this time we are happy to share with you in chapter 10 the kind of environmental regulations that have been liberalized and made easier in terms of compliance, etc., compared to the past. And that is a very positive story that is also captured in chapter 10. The special essay this time is on urbanization, apart from the sequel to AI. In Indian cities, we face a multiplicity of challenges. One is the low floor space index and floor area ratio. Mobility is a challenge because last mile connectivity is still missing, although metro rail network has expanded significantly in the last 10 to 11 years. Solid waste management and waste disposal are still important issues with growing population and growing cities, and governance is dispersed among multiple agencies. But looking at this chapter, if you read it carefully, you will understand that getting urbanization right is not just, once again, as in the case of a healthy food consumption or social media usage, is not just a matter of getting policy right. Citizens have an important role to play. We behave very differently in metro stations and we behave very differently above the surface. And why is that the case? Why is it so? Our behavior in the metro is absolutely impeccable, but not so above the ground. So, why does it happen? And what can be done to make sure that there is no difference in the way citizens respond to metro rail as well as public transportation or road discipline? How is it possible? And what kind of behavioral dynamics are at work here? And how can the state facilitate and nudge the citizens to do so? These kinds of interesting issues are explored in chapter 15, along with a discussion of some specific experiments going on in different parts of the country, which actually point the way forward for the rest of the country as well. Now, moving on to part 3, I would like to compliment Business Standard for this wonderful line, which I use. India's growth story sits at the intersection of global headwinds and domestic potential. Exactly, well captured. So far, we have seen the domestic potential and priorities. We are going to now see the global headwinds. What is unfolding in the world today and why? If you look at the 5 bright pink boxes, this fund manager has predicted it in 2020 that the world will face populism, trade wars, financial repression, military conflicts, and negative real yields. And he doesn't trace this to specific personalities, he traces it to the kind of policies we adopted since the global financial crisis and the quantitative easing and ultra-low interest rate policy that was set in motion in 2008. So in other words, personalities are not the reason why the world is today looking at trade wars, military conflicts, and populism with negative real yields and financial repression to follow. These are products of choices that were made some 15 to 18 years ago, and therefore the train has already left the station with respect to these consequences, and they will be with us for the next 5 to 10 years as well. And that is something we need to take as given when we look at our own policy options and priorities. Therefore, geopolitical tensions are inevitable, and they have led to decadal level highs in global economic uncertainty. The uncertainty index reached historic highs when the reciprocal tariffs were announced, but still they are much higher compared to where they were in the turn of the millennium. And reflecting that is the price of gold, which goes up by more than $100 to $200 per ounce every day. So in other words, gold is not only responding to global uncertainty, but also the question marks arising with respect to the store of value of fiat currencies around the world. So therefore, what is going to become in this era of easy money? The problem is this era of easy money, which was there from 2008 onwards, which also resulted in high inflation in 2022 and 23, has resulted in a very expensive stock market, almost reaching the highs before the tech bubble burst in March 2000. Concentration risk even more than what we saw earlier, in terms of a few companies having a very high market cap, and financing of the global financial capital coming from non-banking sources rather than from banking sources which are better regulated. And if you look at the circular financing that characterizes many of the AI-related investments, you will understand that this can be a sort of a trigger to unravel the global finances. Therefore, we look at 3 possible scenarios for 2026 and maybe somewhere in 2027. It's very difficult to be precise about the timing. Scenario 1, business as usual in 2025, continuing this year, but with less security and more fragility, and we attach a 40 to 45% probability to that. It is disorder, but managed disorder. Scenario 2 is a worse version of scenario 1, and that will result in sharper trade-off for emerging economies, including India, between autonomy, growth, and stability, and supply chains will become even more politicized. Scenario 3 is the worst of them. It's a systemic shock cascade. Leverage AI infrastructure, which we spoke about earlier, will expose fragile business models. Financial, technological, and geopolitical shocks amplify each other and feed into each other. And this low probability but high impact outcome will have macro risks even exceeding those that we saw in the wake of 2008. This is the kind of world scenario that we are facing. Therefore, given this world scenario, but given our stellar domestic growth performance and prospects and priorities, how do we therefore prepare ourselves to drive our development Viksit Bharat agenda? And that is section 4. Why Swadeshi matters? Because the nature of the global system has changed. Trade is no longer reciprocal. Markets are no longer neutral, and supply chains have become instruments of state power, and we have seen them in several examples across the world. And therefore, Swadeshi is a legitimate policy instrument in such a world. Countries have to take care of their priorities, and therefore we should not be squeamish about swearing by Swadeshi in this kind of global environment. The conundrums, however, emerging markets face is this. There is going to be a resource crunch, which is reflected in the price of copper. And in the last 1 week, even crude oil prices have begun to firm. So we need to create buffers, whether it is fertilizer, base metals, crude oil, pharmaceutical ingredients. We need to have buffers because supply chains can be disrupted at any point in time, as we saw in the 3 global scenarios. And the other thing, apart from building up buffers, which we need to import in many cases, we also have to appreciate that as the economy grows, per capita income rises, imports will inevitably rise. This is a given. This chart here shows you China's per capita income growth going from nothing to $12,000 in the last 50 years or so. Simultaneously, imports have grown. We look at China as a major exporting power, that is true, but it also imports a lot, 3.3 trillion, including services. So similarly, India going from $2,500 per capita to $20,000 per capita in the next 25 years will also see its imports rise. Therefore, means we have to export or attract capital to pay for it. That's also inevitable. No matter how successful we are with indigenization, this is something that economic history tells us is inevitable. And therefore, currency depreciation that we are witnessing today isn't something unique to India. Countries which have a current account deficit have seen their currencies depreciate. If you look at the performance of currencies since the millennium began, the Indian rupee actually has done quite well. And the performance even since COVID, India is in the same ballpark, not an outlier. So we need to get the breathless headlines about the Indian rupee into perspective. Therefore, at the same time, since we have aspirations to become a major global player, and naturally currency strength and stability is associated with economic rise. But how do we get there? And that is where this survey focuses on, saying that manufacturing strength is a precondition for achieving currency stability and strength. A strong growth in manufacturing exports leads to improved current accounts position, leads to forex reserve accumulation, and therefore gradual strengthening of currency credibility. If you look at today's countries, which are synonymous with stable currency, Switzerland, Germany before the euro happened, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, all of them have a significant manufacturing presence. So achieving manufacturing competitiveness and goods, merchandise goods export growth is critical to to pursue the goal of currency stability and strength. Similarly, the other advantage of doing manufacturing and manufacturing exports is that will pave the way for lower cost of capital. We see a lot of articles in the media and commentary that India's cost of capital is high, it has to come down, and financial deepening is the answer. No, financial deepening is secondary or auxiliary to achieving cost of capital compared to manufacturing and export surplus. And we have discussed and provided the empirical basis for this in the chapter 3. Productivity-led manufacturing expansion leads to sustained export growth. That in turn turns the current account deficit into a surplus. Currency stability occurs. That lowers the exchange rate depreciation risk premium, leading to a durable decline in capital cost, which further drives manufacturing growth. That is how the virtuous circle gets formed. And therefore, financial deepening matters, but not as much as manufacturing exports matters for sustainably lowering the cost of capital. You can read the analysis in chapter 3. Now, these three elements, indigenization, leading to strategic resilience and strategic indispensability, are the three pillars of investment in national strength. So we have to indigenize, there is no doubt, Swadeshi matters, but we have to move on from that to strategic resilience, being able to withstand external shocks, and third, making India irreplaceable in key global value chains. In other words, we have to start with making things at home competitively. In August 2025, in his Independence Day speech, the Honorable Prime Minister said, "Dam kam and dam zyada." In one sentence, he actually has captured the essence of export competitiveness: good quality at affordable prices. So can we make things at home competitively? Second step to that is progress from there to strategic resilience. Can we keep functioning if the world breaks down? That is resilience. And the third step in the process is, can the world keep functioning if we break down? If the answer is no, then we have become strategically indispensable. And that is the goal we should be looking at in the current geopolitical and geostrategic compulsions that we are facing. Therefore, what should the state do to achieve strategic indispensability? What should the governments do in the country, union and states? Pursue Swadeshi ecosystem first reforms. Deregulation, whole of government approach, cluster, manufacturing cluster-led growth, input cost reduction. It is not just removal of inversion of custom duties, but also eliminating cross-subsidization with respect to free